Now at 6.
An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us.
Tragedy near Capitol Hill. We have the latest reactions from Virginia and our own backyard. And we talk to highway officials here in Kansas. What you can do to protect yourself from an active shooter. That's now at 6. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Brooke Lennington. We'll get to those top stories in just a moment, but first, let's check in with KSNT Storm Track Chief Meteorologist Matt Miller, who is tracking storm chances. Matt, are we at any risk for tonight?
There is a chance for a couple of thunderstorms. I don't think it's going to be a widespread storm event, but the potential is there. You see these thin green lines that are showing up? Those are focused areas that we have to keep an eye on for the possibility of a storm to pop up along one of those and then move off to the southeast. So it's mainly the southeastern counties that have a chance for a couple of thunderstorms this evening. Right now, all the activity to the east, rather quiet over eastern Kansas, but not out of the question that we get a couple of thunderstorms popping up in the portion of the area that is still very humid. The east and southerly winds, very humid. The west has had westerly winds, and it has really dried out. It hasn't cooled off. It's 96 in Manhattan, 93 at Clay Center, 91 to 93 in Topeka. But then you factor in the humidity and look at the difference. Upper 90s to low 100s east, upper 80s to mid 90s west. So big difference because of the humidity. And in that area of high humidity, we could see a couple of storms this evening or perhaps even into early tonight. I'll take a closer look at that coming up.
Dramatic video tonight just miles from Capitol Hill where a gunman opened fire on lawmakers at a baseball field. The FBI says this man, 66-year-old James Hodgkinson, showed up to the field where U.S. congressmen were practicing for a charity baseball game in Alexandria, Virginia. They say he shot several people, including House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. Right now, Scalise is in critical condition at a Virginia hospital. Officials are searching Hodgkinson's home in Illinois. Here's a look at just how close the shooting took place to the nation's capital. President Trump spoke there at the White House earlier today. He says the shooting could have been much worse if it weren't for Capitol Police. Now, even though that shooting happened several states away, that doesn't mean an active shooter situation couldn't happen in our own backyard. KSNT News reporter James Ryan talked with Kansas Highway Patrol about how you can protect yourself.
Hundreds of miles from the Kansas State House, a gunman opened fire at a congressional baseball practice. Still, officers with Capitol Police were notified.
Make sure that we're aware and vigilant to our surroundings and that this is real life and this stuff can happen.
It's a reality that law enforcement are trained for. Ever since a mass shooting in Aurora, Colorado, the Kansas Highway Patrol has provided training to businesses and groups who want to know how to prepare for an active shooter.
When it comes to an active shooter situation, we need to consider sort of three different things: run, hide, or fight.
Trooper Ben Gardner teaches that first you should run and hide, putting as much space and objects between you and the shooter as possible. Lastly, fight, and fight hard.
And it comes to your survival, you do everything. Picking up objects, using it as a weapon, picking up objects to throw at an individual, try to give you more space.
The Kansas Highway Patrol says you should try to put a plan in place in case of an emergency. Even if you never have to use it, it's better to be prepared. James Ryan, KSNT News.
Trooper Gardner says that even if your employer doesn't have an active shooter emergency plan, you should still make your own plan. Lawmakers in Kansas are also reacting on social media. Tonight they are sending thoughts and prayers to those who were there. Some are even expressing anger. Representative Roger Marshall said in a statement, quote, "This at a baseball practice, no less, is an insult to America, our way of life, and our ability to put politics aside and enjoy a pastime to benefit charity." A former representative also says this shooting correlates with other recent incidents.
Comedians using visual props of the president's head severed. When you have plays in New York City that depict the killing of the President of the United States, we've risen to a very dangerous level, I think, in our culture today.
On the other side of the Capitol, Senators Jerry Moran and Pat Roberts were also quick to tweet out their support for the victims of the shooting. It was obviously a tragic situation for those who were there at the baseball field at the time of the shooting. Our very own Washington correspondent Mark Meredith has been on Capitol Hill all day long. Mark, you just got back from the scene of this morning's shootings. What are witnesses telling you about what they heard and saw?
Brooke, you can imagine for so many people, first thing this morning when they heard the first gunshot, it was a lot of chaos and confusion, but also trying to make sense of what was going on. And then there were multiple shots back and forth. so many of them just continuously, that neighbors tell us they realized something terrible was happening, but they just didn't know what was happening in their own backyard. Fast forward an hour later, around 8 a.m., that's as the news was beginning to trickle out that this was members of Congress on a baseball field practicing for a charity baseball game that's going to happen tomorrow night. They were out there practicing when this 66-year-old gunman opened fire. Now tonight the FBI is asking for the public's help, trying to get more information. The suspect has died, but they're hoping maybe the public will have a little bit more details to come forward, maybe give them a shed of light more on the motive as what made to lead up to the shooting. There, Brooke.
And Mark, we've heard a lot from witnesses. President Trump says this tragedy could have been much worse if it hadn't been for Capitol Police. But we should point out not every member of Congress has security, right?
Yeah, Brooke, you bring up a good point. There's, more than 500 members of Congress. It is not easy for them to have security detail all the time. You can imagine the expense. So instead, the House and Senate leadership, they usually get protection. And what we're talking about here, Steve Scalise, the House Republican Majority Whip, he had a protective detail with him. And it's because of that that many people are saying that this really wasn't a bloodbath. It could have been much worse. Even the president calling them heroes earlier today. Brooke?
All right. Thank you, Mark. And it's a good thing they were there. Well, tragedy also unfolding on the other side of the country. Police say at least 3 people are dead after a shooting at a UPS facility in San Francisco. They also say the attacker shot and killed himself. 2 more people were wounded. They are in the hospital tonight. The shooting happened at a UPS facility in San Francisco. Right now, workers at the plant are saying it's too soon to tell how this could impact your mail. We are calling local UPS facilities tonight to keep you up to date as possible. For the latest updates on this shooting incident, as well as how Representative Scalise is recovering in Virginia, visit our website at KSNT.com for minute-by-minute coverage. You can also download our KSNT mobile app. Tonight, Topeka police officers are working to mold kids' perspective on law enforcement officers. The Topeka Police Department is teaming up with schools. They're putting on what they call the School Resource Officer Camp. Middle school students get an up-close and personal look at a law enforcement career. We talked to one officer. He tells us the program is meant to make police work seem less intimidating.
We just bring in different TPD units. We bring in the highway patrol. We bring in the zoo. It's an opportunity for the kids to see us not in uniform, in a different light, build those relationships.
Kids will get demonstrations on things like texting and driving and DUI goggles. Fort Riley is celebrating a major milestone tonight. Stick around to hear how many years of service these soldiers are celebrating.
Later in sports, Kansas City Royals faced a familiar pitcher and had success against him in their series finale against the Giants. Plus, it's a new style of golf tournament going on at Firekeeper this weekend. I'll have the details in about 15 minutes.
Hot and humid weather across the eastern half of the area, hot and dry to the west, but temperatures are largely in the 90s right now. Tomorrow, more of the same, although we'll see a lot of sunshine during the day, warming us up into the mid-90s. We could still see another round of some scattered thunderstorms tomorrow as well. Talk about that coming up.